The rain drummed on the roof, as if reminding me of the time when Torrance was alive. I looked out the window at the gray landscape of Baytown and went over old bills. 68 years old. It seemed time to learn to live within my means, but the latest plumbing repair had emptied my meager account again. My gaze fell on the picture of Torrance standing on the dresser. It's been 15 years since he's been with us. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like another life. You should see our house now, I whispered, looking at his smiling face. Torrance had always been proud of this house. The small but cozy two-story mansion in a quiet Baytown neighborhood was his pride. "This is where our children will grow up, Marilyn," he used to say as he painted the fence or repaired the porch. But now the porch was sagging, the paint on the walls was peeling, and the basement smelled damp all the time. A full-fledged renovation would require money I didn't have. I set the bills aside and rose from the chair. My knees crunched unpleasantly, a reminder of the years I'd spent on my knees with a mop and a rag. After Torrance died, his small appliance repair business had had to be sold. The money wasn't enough for long, especially with two teenagers on his hands. Lloyd was 16 at the time, Talia 14. I took a job as a janitor at the Baytown Plaza Office Center. Working the night shift allowed me to spend my days with the kids. I remember scrubbing floors until they shined, dusting expensive furniture and cleaning endless glass partitions while my children slept at home. My hands were covered in cracks from the cleaning products and my back was aching, but I never complained. Lloyd was such a capable boy. Teachers said he had a bright head and should get into a good college. I saved every dime, took extra shifts to save up for his education. Talia did well in school too, but was more practical. "Mom, I can go to a community college. Don't spend so much money on me," she would say as she watched me fall asleep at breakfast after a night shift. The years went by. Lloyd went to a prestigious college 3 states away. I only saw him at Christmas and sometimes in the summer. Talia stayed in Baytown, finished her accounting degree, and took a job with a local construction company. She married Rivera, had 2 children, and now lived a half hour away from me. Lloyd was different. After college, he moved to Baytown's business district and took a job with an investment firm. I was proud of him, even though I saw him less and less. "Mom, I'm in a meeting. Mom, I'm on a business trip. Mom, let's do it next time," was what I usually heard when I called him. The ringing of the phone snapped me out of my memories. Speaking of my son, "Mom, it's me." Lloyd's voice sounded unusually excited. "Hello, son. Is something wrong?" "No, not at all. On the contrary, I have great news. Yeah, I've proposed to Venetia. We're getting married." "Oh, Lloyd," I pressed my hand to my chest. "That's wonderful. Congratulations to both of you." "Thanks, Mom. Listen, I want you to meet her and her parents. How about dinner this Friday night?" I made reservations at the Côte d'Azur. Azure was the most expensive restaurant in Baytown. I've never been there. "Sure, son. I'd love to come." After the conversation, I stood for a long time, clutching my phone to my chest. My boy's getting married. God, how fast time flies. Just yesterday, I was helping him with his homework, and today he is going to start a family of his own. Vanishi. That's a weird name. Lloyd mentioned her a couple times, but we've never met. All I know is that she works at the same company as him. Friday came faster than I expected. I went through my entire closet looking for something appropriate for a restaurant like this. I finally settled on the dark blue dress I'd worn to Talia's wedding 3 years ago. It was simple but elegant. At least that's what the clerk at the store said. Lloyd picked me up at 7. He looked so handsome in his tailored suit, his hair perfectly styled. My heart overflowed with pride. "Mom," he kissed my cheek, but somehow hurriedly. "Are you ready?" His gaze slid down my dress, and for a second I noticed a shadow of worry in his eyes. "Is something wrong?" I asked, looking down at myself. No, nothing's wrong. It's just," he faltered. "Never mind. Let's go. They're waiting for us." The Côte d'Azur was exactly as I'd imagined. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters in perfectly pressed shirts. I felt out of place, especially when I noticed other diners sneaking glances at my modest dress and old-fashioned purse. Vanishi and her parents were already waiting for us at the table. I immediately realized why Lloyd was nervous about my appearance. Venetia Eldridge looked like a photo model. Tall, slender, with long dark hair and flawless makeup. She wore an exquisite dress that I'm sure cost more than my entire closet. Her parents, Artis and Selma Eldridge, looked equally impressive. Mom, meet Vanishi, Lloyd introduced us with an unnatural smile. Vanishi, this is my mom, Marilyn. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Huffman. Vanishi held out her hand to me with a perfect manicure. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Likewise, dear, and please call me Marilyn. And these are Venetia's parents, Artis and Selma. Mr. Eldridge shook my hand with the look of a man forced to touch something unpleasant. Mrs. Eldridge confined herself to nodding. So, Mrs. Huffman, Artis began as we sat down at the table, Lloyd tells me that you've worked as a janitor? It sounded like I was confessing to some shameful crime. Yes, at the Baytown Plaza. I tried to be dignified. After my husband died, I had to support my children and educate them. How noble, Selma said in a tone that made it sound like the opposite of what it meant. I apologize for my mother, Lloyd suddenly intervened. She's not very good at, etiquette and all that. I felt the color flood my cheeks. Lloyd had never apologized for me before. It's okay, dear. Vanishi stroked his arm. We all understand. The rest of the dinner passed like a blur. I tried to watch which fork I was eating with, not to put my elbows on the table or talk too loudly. Lloyd gave me concerned glances every now and then, and when I mentioned that he'd love to help me bake cookies as a kid, he hurriedly turned the conversation to his success with the company. Where are you planning to have the wedding? I asked when dessert arrived. Oh, we want to have a real celebration, Vanishi perked up. The ceremony at Grace Gardens and the reception at River Hall. 250 guests, live music, 5-tiered cake. Sounds wonderful, I smiled, though I cringed inwardly at the thought of how much it would cost. Yeah, if only we can keep within the budget, Vanishi sighed. The prices are astronomical, and my parents are already taking care of a lot of things. Don't worry, sweetheart. Lloyd squeezed her hand. We'll figure something out. I could see how tense he was. My son had always prided himself on his financial independence, but it seemed his fiancée's demands were more than he could handle. I could help. The words came out before I could think. I have some money left over from the sale of your father's business. I've always saved it for a rainy day, but isn't the wedding of my only son more important? Lloyd stared at me in surprise. Vanishi literally glowed. Really? You would do that for us? She looked at me with genuine interest for the first time that evening. Of course I would. Family is family. Mom, are you sure? Lloyd looked confused, but I could see the relief in his eyes. I'm positive. I'll wire the money tomorrow. That's so generous of you, Marilyn, Artis said with sudden respect in his voice. After dinner, Lloyd drove me home. He was thoughtful in the car. Thank you, Mom, he said at last. It really means a lot to me. I know, son. I always wanted the best for you. He nodded, looking at the road. Vanishi. She's a nice girl, just used to a certain standard of living. Her father is the managing partner in a law firm. They've always lived on the high end. I understand, I said, though I didn't really understand. Torrance and I had never lived large, but we were happy. Mom, Lloyd stopped the car in front of my house. I know you're not you and Vanishi have different social circles, different interests. She grew up in a different environment. That's okay, son, as long as you're happy. Yes, but he hesitated for the wedding. Maybe you should do a little, upgrade your closet, something a little more modern. I felt a pang of resentment, but I smiled. Of course, darling. I'll think of something. And maybe we should go to a good stylist. For hair and makeup, I can pay for it. Don't worry, I'll arrange it myself. I got out of the car, feeling a strange weight on my heart. My son was about to marry a woman who looked down on me, and he seemed to be starting to do the same. Standing at the window and watching his car disappear around the corner, I remembered how once long ago little Lloyd had told me, Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to buy you a palace, and you'll never work again. Now he was grown, and instead of a palace, I was advised to change my hair to match his new life. The next morning, I woke up at first light. The offer to help pay for the wedding demanded action. I pulled out from under the bed the old jewelry box where I kept the paperwork for the account with the money from the sale of Torrance's business. I hadn't touched those funds in 15 years, considering them my last reserve. Well, I guess the day had come. At the bank, I was greeted by a young manager with a polite smile. He was surprised when I told him I wanted to make a large withdrawal. "Are you sure, Mrs. Huffman? It's almost all of your savings." I nodded. It was indeed a large sum, the result of Torrance's years of work. I was to spend it on my son's wedding, who was ashamed of my appearance. "I'm sure you are. My son is getting married, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing." After the bank, I called Lloyd. He was at work, but he took a minute to talk. "Mom, is everything okay?" More than okay. I've withdrawn the money and I'm ready to help you and Venishi. All you have to do is tell me what bills need to be paid." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Lloyd? Yeah, I'm here. It's just, this is so sudden. Vanishi's gonna be thrilled. Listen, we have a meeting with the wedding coordinator at the River Hall in 2 days. Why don't you join us?" "I'd love to." Lloyd picked me up on the appointed day. Vanishi was already in the car, shiny as a new coin, her long fingernails tapping on the phone screen. "Good morning, Marilyn." She looked up as I got into the car. "It's so nice of you to help us with our expenses." "Hello, Vanishi. Glad to be of service." The wedding coordinator, Delilah, appeared to be an energetic woman with a tablet in her hands and a headset in her ear. She spoke quickly, gestured vigorously, and called me Mom of the Groom, as if I didn't have a name. River Hall was impressive, a huge space with columns, crystal chandeliers, and a view of the river. The staff was already setting up sample tables, showing the serving options. "So," Delilah checked her clipboard, "we need to prepay for the hall and catering. 50% now, the rest a week before the event." She said a sum that made me a little dizzy. However, I silently pulled out my checkbook. "I also recommend booking a florist and photographer as soon as possible," Delilah continued. "We have excellent options, but they're in high demand." "Yes, let's do it today," Venishi agreed easily, even though it was a lot of money involved. By the end of the day, I had paid the deposit for the banquet hall, catering, florist, and photographer. My bill was noticeably thinner, but Lloyd looked happy, and Venishi stopped looking at me as an unpleasant chore. "You don't realize how much this means to us," Lloyd said as we drove home. "We will definitely acknowledge your contribution in our speeches," Venishi added. In the following weeks, the wedding preparations took over everyone. I received regular calls from Delilah, who informed me about the new expenses. Cake, musicians, decorations, gifts for guests. The list seemed endless, and with each item, my savings melted away. One day, Vanishi invited me to her wedding dress fitting. It was unexpected, and I felt a rush of warmth. Could it be that our relationship was getting better? The White Swan Bridal Fashion Salon shone with luxury and elegance. The consultant led us to a private room with champagne and fruit. Along with us was Venetia mother, Selma, and 2 of her friends. "Mrs. Huffman, glad you could join us." Selma nodded at me, but there was no sincerity in her voice. Vanishi appeared in several dresses, each more beautiful than the last. She twirled around in front of the mirror, and everyone oohed and ahed in admiration. I, too, genuinely thought she looked fabulous, though the price tag made me wince. "What are you going to wear, Marilyn?" one of Venetia's friends suddenly asked. "Well, I have a dark blue dress." I started, but Selma interrupted me. "Oh no, that's not appropriate for an event like this. You need something special." Venishi seconded. "Lloyd is so worried about everything being perfect. Mom, why don't you help Marilyn pick out something appropriate?" I ended up at another boutique where Selma and Venetia's friends were picking out my outfit. They rejected everything I liked, and in the end I bought an expensive dress that didn't fit me at all but got their approval. "Now you need to think about hair and makeup," Selma said, looking at my gray hair. The next day I was booked into an upscale beauty salon. A stylist with a fancy haircut looked at me like I was a challenge. "We can color in the gray," he suggested, going through my hair, "and give it a more youthful cut. And your eyebrows. We'll redo them completely." I sat in front of the mirror for hours while I was colored, cut, tweezed, and powdered. When it was over, a stranger looked back at me from the mirror, with brown hair, plucked eyebrows, and makeup that, in the stylist's opinion, hid her age. As I paid, the amount almost made me clutch my heart. My savings were melting away at a catastrophic rate. That evening, Lloyd called. Mom, how did it go at the salon? Good, I guess, except I don't recognize myself. That's great. Vanishy showed me a picture of you and you look great, much younger. There was relief in his voice, which hurt me more than all of Selma's stilettos. A week later, Vanishy invited me to the final fitting of her dress. I arrived at the salon earlier than the scheduled time and decided to wait in the lobby. Vanishy and Lloyd were already there, but didn't notice me behind the large floral centerpiece. I don't understand why we have to run around with her like this, Vanishy said in an irritated tone. Yes, she gives money, but she is your mother. She should be helping. I know, dear. Lloyd's voice sounded tired. But understand, it's not easy for her with us. Different circle, different habits. Did you see the way she held her glass at dinner with my parents? It was awful. And her accent. Honestly, I'm afraid to imagine how she'll look in our wedding pictures. My heart ached. I knew Vanishy wasn't happy with me, but I didn't think it was that bad. Did she manage to find a proper dress? Lloyd asked. Yes, your mom and her friends helped. But her hands, Lloyd. It's like she's been scrubbing floors her whole life. No manicure can hide that. What do you suggest? Lloyd's voice is a little strained. I don't know. Maybe she doesn't have to be at the ceremony. She could join the reception later when the main photos have already been taken. There was a pause and I held my breath. You want my mother not to be at our marriage ceremony? Lloyd said slowly. Not so categorically, Vanishy corrected quickly. It's just, you can see how she's out of the picture. My parents have invited so many important people. Imagine how it's going to look. A former cleaning lady amongst lawyers and businessmen. Vanishy, this is my mother. Lloyd spoke softly but firmly. Anyway, she has to be at the ceremony. Of course, darling, I was just thinking. Vanishy sighed. All right, forget it. Just talk to her, okay? Explain how important it is to make everything look perfect. Maybe remind her of how to behave in decent society. Okay, I'll talk to her. Lloyd gave in. I quietly retreated to the exit and walked out of the salon. I needed some time to collect my thoughts. My daughter-in-law thought I was a disgrace, and my son hadn't stood up for me the way he should have. 15 minutes later, I came back pretending that I had just arrived. Vanishy was in the fitting room and Lloyd was sitting in the lobby staring at his phone. Mom? He looked up and smiled. You're just in time. Vanishy's almost ready. Lloyd, I tried to speak normally. Is everything okay? Of course. He frowned. Why? Nothing. You just seem preoccupied. Just the usual pre-wedding jitters. He shrugged. By the way, Mom, I wanted to invite you to dinner next week. Just you and me, to celebrate the upcoming wedding, so to speak. I smiled even though I was squeezing inside. I already knew what this dinner was going to be about. My pleasure, son. The restaurant Lloyd had chosen wasn't as fancy as the Azure, but it was still very nice. We sat at a table by the window and I could see my son was nervous. He barely touched his steak and drank 2 glasses of wine before he dared to speak. Mom, you know how much your help with the wedding means to me, he began. I do, son. And I'm very grateful for everything you've done. The money, the involvement, the support, but I decided to help him. Lloyd sighed. You know, this wedding, it's very career-enhancing. There will be firm partners, clients, important Venetia family connections. Everything has to be flawless. And I don't fit into that flawlessness, I said quietly. His eyes widened. What? No, that's not what I meant. Lloyd, I put my hand on his palm. Just say what you want to say. He looked away, then pulled himself together. Mom, I think it would be best if you didn't come to the ceremony. Even though I was prepared for those words, they still hit like a slap in the face. I understand. My voice sounded muffled. It's not about you, he added hastily. It's just that Vanishy and I decided to make the ceremony more chamber-like. Only our closest friends and colleagues, and everyone can come to the reception later. But I'm not even the closest person. I'm your mother, Lloyd. He averted his eyes. You don't understand. This is important for my career, for my future with Venetia. Her father can make me a partner in his firm. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And I could ruin it by looking like this. I said out loud what I knew from the conversation I overheard. Lloyd flinched. I didn't say that. But it's true, isn't it? You're ashamed of me. My accent, my hands, my past as a janitor. Mom? I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but I held back. I've worked my whole life for you, Lloyd. Cleaning toilets and scrubbing floors so you could get an education. Never once complained, never once asked for anything in return. I know, and I'm grateful. Grateful? I grinned bitterly. You're asking me not to come to your wedding because I'm not good enough for your new friends. Is that your gratitude? That's not what I meant, he started to get angry. You've got it all wrong. Am I? Then explain to me where I'm wrong. Lloyd was silent, unable to find the words. You know what? I pulled my checkbook out of my purse. I've paid so many bills for your wedding. Maybe you'd like to reimburse me since I'm not fit to attend the ceremony. Mom, don't start. He lowered his voice, glancing around at the neighboring tables. You're making a big deal out of this. Am I? I got up from the table. I think you're the one making your mother look like a waste of space. Sit down, please. Lloyd grabbed my hand. People are watching. Let them look. I pulled my hand away. I don't care anymore. Just like you don't care that you broke my heart. I turned and walked toward the exit, tears streaming down my cheeks. Behind me, I heard Lloyd calling my name, but I didn't stop. It was raining outside, but I didn't even open my umbrella. Let all the makeup I'd paid a fortune for be washed away by the rain. I wasn't going to pretend to be someone else anymore. The drive home was the longest of my life. I walked in the rain until I was soaked to the skin. My mind replayed my son's words, his dismissive tone, and how easily he'd decided to cut me out of the most important day of his life. The front door closed behind me with a heavy thud. The house greeted me with its usual silence, but today it seemed especially oppressive. I kicked off my soaked shoes and walked into the living room without turning on the light. I'd never felt so betrayed. With trembling hands, I sank into Torrance's chair. It was long out of shape, the upholstery frayed on the armrests, but I couldn't bring myself to get rid of it. In that chair, Torrance read stories to his children, watched baseball games, made plans for the future. In that chair he died, quietly, in his sleep, of a heart attack. What would you do, Torrance? I whispered into the void. What would you do with our son? The answer was silence. I knew Torrance would never allow such an attitude. He was a gentle man, but had a steely temper when it came to principles. Rising from my chair, I made my way to the old secretary in the corner of the room. The bottom drawer hadn't been opened in years. It held family photos and documents I rarely accessed. The knob was sticking, and I had to struggle to pull the drawer open. Inside were albums, bundles of letters tied with faded ribbons, and file folders. I pulled out the oldest scrapbook, a worn, leather-covered one. On the first page was a wedding photo of Torrance and me. We were so young, so naive, believing that love could overcome all odds. As I turned the pages, I watched our children grow up. Here's Lloyd, 3 years old, proudly showing off a doodle he's drawn. Here he is 7, sitting on his dad's shoulders at a baseball game. And here he is 10, receiving a diploma at school, and I'm standing next to him, so proud, wearing my best dress that I made myself. Tears came to my eyes again. I was there for him at every important event in his life, and now he doesn't want me at his wedding. Under the albums, I found a file folder. When I opened it, I saw receipts from recent prepayments for the wedding. Banquet hall, catering, florist, photographer. In total, I had spent almost all of my savings. Money that was supposed to provide for my old age. Why did I do it? Why did I let myself believe that I could buy the respect of my son and his fiancée? That money could make them accept me? As I continued going through my papers, I came across a folder labeled Automobile. Inside were papers for the silver Lexus sedan I'd given Lloyd for his college graduation. It was a crazy expense, almost a third of the money from the sale of the Torrance business. But Lloyd had dreamed of that car so much, had admired it so much at the car dealership. Mom, when I have one of these, everyone will know I'm worth something, he said, and I couldn't resist. Then we registered the car on me. It was more favorable with insurance. Lloyd promised to reissue the papers to himself when he got a job, but it had been 6 years, and the car was still registered to me. I was paying property taxes, even though Lloyd was the only one driving it, I took a good look at the paperwork. The car was legally mine. I owned it even though I'd given it to my son. The license, the insurance, the registration, everything was in my name. A strange feeling came over me. Anger, resentment, frustration, all mixed into a determination to do something about it. I couldn't let my son humiliate me, reject me, shame me, and still have my financial support. It wasn't right. I put the papers aside and went upstairs to my bedroom. The old clock showed almost midnight, but there was no sleep in either eye. I undressed and took a hot shower, washing away the remnants of my makeup and tears. Then I put on an old nightgown and sat on the bed with a notepad. What can I do? I wrote at the top of the page. 1. Cancel the wedding payments. I checked the checks. Most of them were prepayments with the option to cancel 2 weeks before the event. The wedding was 3 weeks away, so I could still get some of the money back. 2. Get the car. It belonged to me, and I had every right to use it as I saw fit. But would I dare? Wouldn't that be too cruel? Wouldn't it destroy my relationship with my son completely? I remembered his words at the restaurant. It would be better if you didn't come to the ceremony. And my resolve strengthened again. He had already ruined our relationship with his neglect. I spent the rest of the night thinking, staring at the ceiling. By dawn, I had made my decision. In the morning, as soon as the offices opened, I started making calls. First to River Hall, to cancel the banquet hall reservation. The manager was surprised, but when I explained that I was the mother of the groom and a paying customer, he agreed to refund the money minus a small fee. I then called the catering company, the florist, the photographer. The same story was repeated everywhere. Surprise, questions, but eventually agreeing to refund most of the money. By noon, I had canceled almost all of the payments I'd made for Lloyd's wedding. The phone rang as I was finishing up a conversation with a company that provides holiday lighting. It was Delilah, the wedding coordinator. Mrs. Huffman, what's going on? Her voice sounded confused. I'm being informed that you're canceling all payments? That's correct, Delilah. But, the wedding is in 3 weeks. Everything's already been arranged, booked. I'm afraid there's been a change of plans, at least my involvement in them. Does Lloyd know about this? He'll know soon enough, I said calmly. Good day, Delilah. I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. The phone rang again, but I didn't answer it. I needed to finish what I had started. The next step was the car. I found the number for the tow truck service in the phone book and called them over to the office building where Lloyd worked. I knew the silver Lexus would be parked in the parking lot. I need my car towed, I told the dispatcher. I have all the paperwork to prove I'm the owner. Of course, ma'am. The tow truck will be here in 20 minutes. Give me the address. I dictated the address of Lloyd's office and described the car. Then I gathered all the necessary paperwork into a folder and hailed a cab. As I approached the office building, I saw a tow truck already loading a silver Lexus onto the platform. The driver checked my documents, asked me to sign some papers, and said that he would deliver the car to the specified address. Where exactly do you want us to take it, ma'am? Premium Auto on Center Street. I arranged the sale. That was the truth. I called the dealership on the way here and found out they were willing to buy the car back for a decent price, considering its excellent condition. Lloyd always took good care of his Lexus. When the tow truck left with the car, I was left standing in the parking lot feeling a strange emptiness inside. Part of me felt satisfied with the measures I had taken, but another part of me clenched painfully at the thought of my son's reaction. I didn't wait for Lloyd to discover the car was missing. Instead, I returned home in a cab and began preparing for the inevitable conversation. That evening, I was sitting in the kitchen, sipping tea and looking over receipts for refunds, when I heard the squeal of brakes in the driveway. The car door slammed so hard that the windows rattled. A second later, there was a banging on the door. Mom, open up right now! Lloyd's voice sounded fierce. I calmly walked to the door and opened it. Lloyd burst into the house, his face red with anger. What have you done? He was almost shouting. Do you have any idea how I looked when I got the call that all the wedding payments were canceled? And then I walk out into the parking lot and my car is gone. Hello, Lloyd, I remained calm. Come on in, we need to talk. Talk? He flailed his arms in anger. You ruined my wedding, you stole my car, and you want to talk? I didn't steal your car, Lloyd. I took my car. It's registered to me, and I have every right to use it. It was a gift. You gave it to me. Yes, I did. But legally, it's always been mine. You promised to reissue the deed 6 years ago, but you never did. I went into the living room and picked up a file from the table. Here, take a look for yourself. The registration, the insurance, it's all in my name. Lloyd grabbed the folder and flipped through the documents, his anger slowly changing to disbelief. What did you do with it? He finally asked. I sold it. To Premium Auto. Sold it? He stared at me with his mouth hanging open. Without my permission? I didn't need your permission, Lloyd. It was my car. And the wedding payments? Why did you cancel them? I pointed to the chair. Sit down, please. Let's talk like adults. To my surprise, Lloyd obeyed. He sat down in the chair, still clutching the file folder. I canceled the payments because I don't want to be a part of this wedding anymore, I said bluntly. You've made it clear that I'm not welcome at the ceremony. Well, then I won't pay for an event I'm not invited to. But we explained. Explained what, Lloyd? That you and Venetia are ashamed of me? That my appearance could ruin your wedding photos? That my janitorial hands and my accent would embarrass your important guests? He averted his eyes. You've got it all wrong. No, Lloyd. I got it right. I overheard you talking to Venetia at the bridal salon. I know what she said about me, and I know you didn't contradict her. His face turned pale. Were you eavesdropping? No, I came in early and overheard. But that doesn't change the point. You're ashamed of me, of your mother, who worked all her life to give you an education and opportunities I never had. Lloyd lowered his head, unable to find the words. You know what the saddest part is, Lloyd? It's not that you and Venetia think I'm unworthy of your society. It's that you let her talk about your mother like that you've started to think that way yourself. I didn't. Don't deny it. You apologized for me to the Eldridges. You were ashamed of my dress, my speech, my manners. You offered me money not to attend the ceremony. I did not offer you money for that. He was indignant. You didn't? What do you call your offer to make up for the inconvenience? As if my absence from my only son's wedding is just an inconvenience. Lloyd stood up and started pacing the room. Okay, I was wrong. I apologize. But why cancel all the payments? Why take the car away? Do you know the position you put me in? What position did you put me in, Lloyd? My voice shook. When you said I couldn't come to your wedding because I wasn't good enough for your new friends? He paused, looking at me bitterly. And now what? Are you satisfied? You ruined my wedding. My relationship with Venetia might not survive this. Her parents already think I'm a loser. I didn't ruin your wedding, Lloyd. I just refused to pay for it. There's a difference. What difference? Without your money, we can't have the ceremony we planned. Then do it more modestly. Or ask the Eldridges to help. They're such wealthy and respected people. Lloyd shook his head. I can't believe you'd do this to me. And I can't believe you'd do that to me, I replied. But here you and I are even. I stood up and walked over to the secretary where I pulled out an envelope. Here are the receipts for the canceled payments. And here are the papers on the car, proving that I was the rightful owner. It's all legal, Lloyd. I didn't steal anything and I didn't cheat anyone. He took the envelope without looking at me. What are you going to do with the money? It's none of your business, I answered firmly. But if you're interested, I'm going to spend it on myself, for the first time in years. Lloyd clutched the envelope in his hand, his face contorted with anger and resentment. You know what, Mom? You're right. I was really ashamed of you. And now I realize why. You're an angry, vindictive woman who thinks only of herself. His words hit me like a slap in the face, but I didn't show any pain. If it makes you feel better, Lloyd, I said calmly. Now please go away. We have nothing more to talk about. I'd love to. He headed for the door, but stopped on the threshold. You know, I thought you'd be happy for me. That you'd realize how important this wedding, these connections are to me. But you never gave a damn about my dreams. That's not true, Lloyd, and you know it. I've always supported your dreams, but I won't let you trample on my dignity. He shook his head and walked out, slamming the door so hard that a framed photograph fell from the shelf. The glass shattered, splintering on the floor, just like my relationship with my son. I sank slowly into Torrance's chair, feeling strangely empty. I had done what I thought was right, But then why did it hurt so much? The silence of the house enveloped me like an old blanket. I sat still, staring at the shards of the broken photograph, and thought about how some things, once broken, are impossible to glue back together. The morning after my fight with Lloyd was surprisingly clear. I woke up at first light, feeling strangely light. The pain of my son's betrayal hadn't gone away, but there was a new sense of release. For the first time in years, I could think about myself, about my desires. The money from the sale of the car had already arrived in my account, and the refunds from the wedding payments were due in the next few days. All in all, it was an impressive sum, not wealth, but enough to start something new. At breakfast, I spread out my old notebooks on the kitchen table. One of them, the one with the tattered, faded cover, contained the outline of a business plan for a flower store that I'd drawn up when Torrance was still alive. At the time, it seemed like a pipe dream to open my own business, to create beautiful bouquets, to bring joy to people. Life had it differently. The death of her husband, the need to raise children alone, work as a cleaner, all this pushed the dream into the background. But now I had money, time, and determination. I called Talia. My daughter had always been more practical and down to earth than Lloyd, but also more empathetic. Mom, is something wrong? There was concern in her voice. I rarely called her during office hours. No, honey. Well, yes, but it's nothing. I have a business proposition for you. A business proposition? She was surprised. What kind of business? I want to open a flower store and I need an accountant's advice. There was a pause on the other end of the line. A flower store? Mom, are you serious? Oh, absolutely. Can you come over tonight? I'll explain everything. Talia arrived after work with a folder of papers and a lot of questions. I told her about the conflict with Lloyd, about his refusal to see me at the wedding, about how I canceled payments and sold his car. Oh my God, Mom. Talia covered her mouth with her hand. Did you really do that? Yes, I nodded. And you know what? I don't regret it. To my surprise, my daughter didn't judge me. Instead, she hugged me tightly and whispered, I'm proud of you. It was high time I put Lloyd in his place. We talked late into the night. Talia helped me draw up a realistic business plan, calculate startup costs, deal with taxes and licenses. Her experience as an accountant was invaluable. There's a small space on Maple Street in downtown Baytown, she said, as we discussed possible locations for the store. It used to be a bakery. The owner retired and the place has been empty for months. The location is great, close to the park, good foot traffic. The next day we went together to look at the premises. It was perfect, small but bright, with large windows and easy access from the street. The rent was reasonable, especially considering the central location. I'll take it, I told the real estate agent without hesitation. Are you sure, Mrs. Huffman? Would you like to think about it for a couple days? I've been thinking about it for 30 years, I replied. That's enough. The next weeks flew by in a flurry of activity. I did paperwork, bought equipment, selected flower suppliers. Talia helped me with the financial side of things, and her husband, River, who worked for a construction company, took on the renovations. One evening, when Talia and I were painting the walls of the store a soft green color, she suddenly asked, Mommy, have you thought about contacting Aunt Audrey? She was a landscaper. She might have some useful contacts. Audrey, my little sister. We haven't spoken in almost 10 years after a stupid fight over my parents' inheritance. I thought she took more than she was entitled to. She claimed I'd always treated her down. Word got out and we stopped talking. I don't know, Talia. It's been a long time. That's why it's worth a try, my daughter said softly. Life is too short for such long grudges. I've been thinking about this proposal for days. Finally, plucking up the courage, I found an old notebook with Audrey's number in it and called. The phone was answered after the third ring. Hello? My sister's voice hadn't changed much over the years. Audrey? It's Marilyn. Silence. Then uncertain. Marilyn? Is something wrong? Nunum I mean, yes, but nothing bad. I'm opening a flower store and I was wondering. Maybe you could help me with some advice. Another pause, longer than the last. A flower store? You? Yes, me. I couldn't hold back a smile. Amazing, isn't it? Very, she said, warmth in her voice. You know what? I'll come over. I'll see what you're up to. Audrey arrived 3 days later, straight from Portland, where she'd lived for the past few years. Seeing her on my doorstep aged, with new wrinkles around her eyes, but still with that same mischievous twinkle in her eye, I felt the wall we'd built together over the years crumble. We hugged, both crying and laughing at the same time. Silly us, Audrey whispered. So many years lost. Better late than never, I replied, wiping away my tears. Audrey stayed in Baytown for a few weeks. She really proved to be invaluable in getting the flower store organized. Her expertise in landscaping, her knowledge of suppliers, her ability to put together bouquets, all added a professional touch to my humble enterprise. You have to specialize, she said as she arranged trial arrangements in the still empty store. Find something that will set you apart from other florists. Maybe vintage arrangements? Or bouquets in the Provence style? We worked together to develop a concept, chose a name, created a corporate style. In the end, we settled on Marilyn's flowers, simple and tasteful. The best revenge is success, Audrey said when I told her about the conflict with Lloyd. Show him that you can be happy without his approval. I didn't want to think of my actions as revenge. For me, it was more about restoring justice, taking back control of my own life. But there was truth in my sister's words. I wanted to prove to my son that I was worth something. Lloyd never gave up trying to contact me. He called almost every day for the first week after our fight, but I didn't answer. Then he started sending messages through Talia. He says the wedding had to be postponed, the daughter said. Venetia's parents have refused to increase their share of the expenses, and without your money, they can't hold the ceremony as planned. It's not my problem, I replied, though something inside clenched at the thought that I might have ruined my son's happiness. He also said that his relationship with Venetia has become strained. She accuses him of not being able to control his own mother. This news gave me mixed feelings. On one hand, I felt sorry for Lloyd. On the other, I realized that Venetia was showing her true colors and perhaps it was for the best. One day, Lloyd came right into the store as Audrey, Talia, and I were finishing up some repairs. He looked tired and depressed. Mom, we need to talk, he said, standing in the doorway. I shook my head. Not now, Lloyd. I don't have anything to say to you. Please, he sounded desperate. I was wrong. I want to apologize. Are you apologizing because you really realize what you did was wrong, or because you're out of money in a car? I asked him bluntly. He couldn't find anything to say, and that was more eloquent than any words. Go away, Lloyd. I'm busy. I have a business opening in a week. Talia walked her brother to the door. I heard them talking quietly, but I couldn't make out the words. When my daughter returned, her face was frowning. What did he say? I asked. That Venetia was threatening to break the engagement if he didn't solve the financial problems with the wedding, and that her father had withdrawn the offer of partnership in the firm. I sighed. Part of me wanted to help my son, but another part of me realized this was an important lesson he needed to learn. He'll do fine, I said. He's always been a smart boy. Audrey, who was watching the scene, shook her head. You know, Marilyn, I remember Lloyd as a little boy. He was always a little spoiled, always wanting to be the center of attention. But I never thought he'd grow up to be so calculating. He wasn't always like that, I interceded for my son. It's the influence of Venetia and her family. They changed him. No, Marilyn, Audrey said softly. No one can change a man against his will. He chose this path on his own. I knew my sister was right, but it pained me to admit it. Marilyn's flowers opened on the first day of spring. Talia, Audrey, Reaver, and I worked through the night getting the store ready for the big day. The window was decorated with gorgeous arrangements of tulips, daffodils, and mimosas. The inside smelled of freshness and new beginnings. To my surprise, many people came to the opening. Neighbors, old acquaintances, even a few of my former Baytown Plaza colleagues. Talia made sure to spread the word, and River arranged with the local newspaper for a small feature. You have no idea how happy I am to see a flower store in our neighborhood, the older woman said as she bought a bouquet of yellow tulips. I used to have to go to a shopping center on the outskirts. What wonderful compositions, admired another customer. Not at all like the standard bouquets from the supermarket. By the end of the day, almost all the flowers were sold out, and the order book was filled for the week ahead. I felt tired, but it was a pleasant tiredness, filled with a sense of accomplishment and new possibilities. Here's to you, sis. Audrey raised her glass of wine as we closed the store and gathered at my house. Here's to a new chapter in your life. To a new chapter, Talia seconded. And here's to you finally starting to live for yourself, Mom. I smiled, feeling warm from their support. For the first time in a long time, I was truly happy. In the weeks that followed, the store gained popularity. I hired an assistant, a young girl named Daisy, who was an art major in college and had excellent taste. Together, we created unique bouquets that quickly became the hallmark of Maryland's flowers. Audrey decided to stay in Baytown. She rented a small apartment near my home and began helping me in the store on a full-time basis. Her expertise and creative eye were invaluable, and our relationship is stronger than ever. I'm thinking about moving here permanently, she said one day as we were closing up store. There's nothing holding me back in Portland, and here, family here. I hugged my sister, feeling like fate had put everything in place in an amazing way. I hadn't heard from Lloyd in weeks. Talia mentioned his brother occasionally, saying that he'd immersed himself in his work and barely spoke to his family. The wedding had been postponed indefinitely, though the engagement had not been officially broken off. Venishi has given an ultimatum, Talia told me during Sunday lunch. Either they get married before the end of the year as planned or it's over. What did he decide? I asked, trying to sound indifferent. I don't know. He won't share it with me. But he looks unhappy. I felt a prick of conscience. Maybe I'd gone too far. Maybe I should have forgiven him. Don't blame yourself, Marilyn, Audrey said, as if she'd read my mind. You didn't ruin his life. You just stopped sacrificing yours for him. And I knew she was right. All my life, I'd put my children's wishes before my own. Especially Lloyd. Talented, ambitious, so much like their father. I worked my ass off to give him everything I could. And what did I get in return? The shame of my existence. Things were different now. I had my own business that brought not only money, but fulfillment. I had people around me who accepted me for who I was, my accent, my calloused hands, my background as a janitor. Talia, River, their kids, Audrey, even Daisy, they became my real family. One day, about 2 months after the store opened, the bell above the door jingled, and an elegant woman with dark glasses and a silk scarf tied around her head walked in. It took me a few seconds to recognize her as Venetia Eldridge. She didn't recognize me. The new hairstyle, the reading glasses, the confident posture of a business owner made me unlike the awkward woman she'd met at the Azure dinner. Good afternoon, she said, looking around the store. I need flowers for a small wedding ceremony. A wedding, I tried to speak calmly. When is the event? In 2 weeks. We've decided to have a small ceremony, just for the closest people. I see. What kind of flowers do you prefer? While Venishi was describing her preferences, I was thinking about how strange life is. A woman who thought I was unworthy of attending her wedding is now ordering flowers from me for that very event. It'll cost about $500, I said, finishing my calculations. I need a 50% deposit. Venishi nodded and pulled out a credit card. Last name? I asked, filling out the order form. Eldridge. Venetia Eldridge. And the name of the groom? I couldn't resist the question. Lloyd Huffman, she answered, not realizing who she was talking to. I wrote down my son's name, feeling a strange emptiness inside. They'd decided to get married after all, despite the financial difficulties. So is there something real between them? Delivery or pickup? I asked without looking up. Delivery, please. Grace Gardens, 10 o'clock in the morning. I nodded, writing down the address and time. All set, Ms. Eldridge. The flowers will be delivered on time. When she left, I sat at the counter for a long time, looking at the order form. Lloyd's wedding. Without me, without my presence, but with my flowers. Fate plays strange tricks on me sometimes. That evening, I told Audrey and Talia all about it. They were shocked. Unbelievable, Talia shook her head. She didn't even recognize you? No, I grinned. I guess all cleaning ladies look the same to her. What are you going to do? Audrey asked. Are you going to cancel the order? I wondered. My first impulse was to back out so I wouldn't have anything to do with a wedding I wasn't invited to. But then I thought about the fact that it would be too petty an act. No, I decided. I'll fulfill the order. It's my business, and I'll be professional, but I'll deliver the flowers personally. Are you sure? Talia looked worried. This could be painful. I'm sure, I nodded. It was time to put an end to this story. The morning of the wedding day was clear and sunny. I carefully packed all the arrangements I'd ordered into the van I'd recently purchased for deliveries. The bride's bouquet, groom's boutonniere, table centerpieces, everything was perfect. I also prepared a small gift from myself, an elegant bouquet of white roses and lavender tied with silk ribbon. Are you sure you want to go by yourself? Audrey asked, helping me load the last of the floral arrangements. I could deliver this order. No, I have to do it myself, I replied. Some stories need to be completed on your own. I arrived at Grace Gardens 2 hours before the ceremony. It was a small but cozy space with large windows overlooking the garden, not at all like the lavish river hall, where they had originally planned to celebrate with hundreds of guests. After unloading the flowers, I began setting up the archway and arranging the arrangements on the tables. The work calmed me down, allowing me not to think about my upcoming meeting with my son. I was completely immersed in the process, making sure that every flower was in its place, every ribbon perfectly tied. I was almost finished decorating the arch when I heard the door open. I turned around and saw Lloyd standing in the doorway with a look of utter amazement on his face. Mom? His voice shook. What are you doing here? Hello, Lloyd. I calmly continued my work. I'm delivering flowers for your wedding. You own a flower store? He looked completely confused. Yeah, for 6 months now. Marilyn's Flowers on Maple Street. He slowly moved closer, looking at the archway, the bouquets on the tables, my work. This is amazing, he said quietly. I didn't know you were into flowers. There's a lot you didn't know about me, Lloyd. I turned to him. How are you? He lowered his eyes. I'm okay. I'm working. Getting ready for the wedding, as you can see. Vanishi didn't recognize me when she ordered flowers, I remarked. What? He raised his eyebrows. She was the one who placed the order? Yes, 2 weeks ago. She came into the store, picked out the arrangements, left a deposit. Never once looked me in the eye closely enough to recognize me. Lloyd blushed with embarrassment. Mom, I need to apologize for everything I said back then, for the way I acted. I was wrong. I silently continued my work, attaching the last sprigs of eucalyptus to the arch. His apology sounded sincere, but was it genuine remorse or just an admission of defeat? Why did you decide to marry Venetia despite everything that had happened? I asked bluntly. Lloyd sighed, sinking down into one of the chairs. I love her, Mom. Yes, she's spoiled, arrogant, sometimes even cruel, but she's changed over the months too. When her parents turned their backs on us, when the money stopped pouring in, I saw a different Vanishi, one who could fight for what she cared for. I nodded, realizing that there was real feeling behind those words. Love is often inexplicable, irrational, but no less real. I'm happy for you, I said sincerely. I hope you'll be happy. Mom, Lloyd got up and walked over to me. Please stay for the ceremony. Be my guest. I know I don't deserve it, but... I shook my head, interrupting him. No, Lloyd. I came as a florist, not as a guest, and especially not as the mother of the groom. I don't belong here. But we could start over. There was a pleading tone in his voice. I realize I've been a terrible son. I let success get to me, let other people's opinions mean more than your love and support. But I've changed, I really have. I finished the archway and turned to face him. Lloyd, some wounds don't heal, I said softly but firmly. What you said to me then in the restaurant, that you let Venetia talk about me, it can't just be forgotten or erased. It changed something fundamental between us. What can I do? He looked truly desperate. How can I fix this? Maybe there's no way, I shrugged. Sometimes the consequences of our actions stay with us forever, but that doesn't mean we can't move on. I found my way, Lloyd. I've created a new life that I'm happy in, a life where I'm respected for who I am, not ashamed of my past. I never meant to hurt you, he whispered. But you did, I met his gaze. And it's not about the money or the car or the wedding. It was about you letting me feel like I wasn't good enough for your new life. Like everything I've done for you, all the sacrifices I've made, all the sleepless nights, all the years of hard work. It's all worthless compared to people who judge a man by his accent or the calluses on his hands." Lloyd lowered his head, and I saw a tear roll down his cheek. My heart clenched. He was still my son, the one I loved no matter what. But I couldn't let that love make me vulnerable again. I pulled a small but exquisite bouquet of white roses and lavender from my bag, tied with a silk ribbon. "I brought you a gift," I said. "From Marilyn's Flowers, for the bride." Lloyd took the bouquet, his hands trembling. "Thank you," he whispered. "It's beautiful." I checked all the arrangements again, made sure everything was perfect, and began to gather my instruments. "I have to go," I said. The guests would be arriving soon. "Mom," Lloyd caught my hand. "I love you. Despite everything, despite my mistakes, despite my stupidity. I love you and I'm proud of you, of what you've made of your life, of how strong you've turned out to be." I looked into his eyes, the eyes of the boy I'd birthed, raised, given everything I could. And for a second, I felt tempted to forgive, to forget, to go back to the way things were. But then I remembered the last 6 months, my store growing and thriving, Audrey, with whom we'd rebuilt a sisterly relationship, Talia and her family, who supported me through everything, new friends, new opportunities, new confidence. "I love you too, Lloyd," I said sincerely. "You're my son, and that will never change. But I will no longer let that love define my worth or dictate my decisions. I wish you and Vanishi happiness, I really do. But my path now lies in a different direction." I released my hand from his grip, picked up my tool bag, and headed towards the exit. At the door, I turned around one last time. "Have a good ceremony," I said. "The flowers will stay fresh until late afternoon, don't worry." As I walked out of Grace Gardens, I took a deep breath of the fresh spring air. I felt light and calm, as if I'd finally shed the heavy weight I'd been carrying all these years. The weight of other people's expectations, other people's standards, other people's ideas of what I should be. I got into my new car, modest but reliable, bought with the proceeds from the store, and drove home. Today, Audrey, Talia, and her family and I were planning a barbecue in my garden. Then we were going to discuss a plan to expand the store. And next week, I signed up for a landscaping course, a long-time dream I could finally fulfill. Life went on, and now it was my life, built on my terms. A life in which I learned to value myself and demand the same treatment from others. A life in which self-respect became more important than other people's approval. And it was the most important discovery I had made in my 68 years.